Hi, I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, aka The Rig Doctor, and today we're going to talk about the most underrated guitarist in the studio scene in the 80s and 90s. It's none other than Dann Huff. So who is Dann Huff? He now is famously known as a producer to many of us in the guitar community, and I think also the music community in general. But during the 80s and 90s, Dann Huff was a studio musician, started in Nashville, transitioned to LA, and was pretty much owning a lot of the pop music territory for a large period of time, but is still relatively unknown compared to his peers like Paul Jackson Jr., Dean Parks, Michael Landau, Michael Thompson, and Steve Lukather. However, there was this golden era in the mid-80s to early 90s, and even a little bit into the mid-90s when he had transitioned back to Nashville but hadn't fully gone into a producer role, where Dann was absolutely killing it as a guitar player. So today what I've done, so that we can really go through some of Dann's catalogs and showcase some of his great playing, I've brought in my friend Benjamin Forehand from Nashville, who's one of my favorite guitar players ever, who really nails a lot of these type of tones, and we're going to be using my wet dry wet rig. Now, if you're curious about what a wet dry wet rig is, we have some great videos on that you can check out above and in the links below. We also have a dedicated video on this particular rig so you can see the exact signal path that we're running. We'll showcase a few of the pedals, but if you want to know it in more detail, I highly recommend that you check out those videos about this particular rig and wet dry wet rigs generally. But I want to start first with what I consider to be one of the great solo tones of the generation. In 1989, Michael Bolton came out with his album Soul Provider, and this was a really great example of Dann Huff kind of melding some of the stuff that maybe ordinarily folks would need to hire a guy like Steve Lukather or Michael Landau for, because it culminates high gain sounds of kind of like a Soldano or that really high gain kind of Marshall lead tone, pairing that with the tri-stereo chorus to kind of get a modulated lead tone that's really high gain. He does a beautiful job of this, plays really melodically, plays into the modulation of the key. It's an absolute great song and a great example of the lead sound that Dann Huff can generate that not only did he do in his solo albums with a band called Giant, but used all over the place with all sorts of artists. Let's take it over to Ben and have him show us how this sounds in the context of that Michael Bolton song. That was incredible. Did a wonderful job of showing how the chorus and also using the high gain distortion. In this case, we were using the Riot for our high gain distortion, sort of emulating those Soldano sounds or those SE3 Plus type sounds from Custom Audio Electronics, and then pairing that with the Red 7 chorus that's kind of emulating a tri-stereo chorus sound. Absolutely incredible. Again, this whole time we're just running through a Fender Hot Rod DeVille, so nothing out of the ordinary, very common backline amp. Next song we're going to go into, kind of in keeping with the high gain and focusing more on rhythm this time, we're going to play the theme from Top Gun that Kenny Loggins wrote, which was Danger Zone. This is going to be a great song that emulates a lot of that really high gain sound and also kind of restricting it EQ-wise, so it has a little bit more of a boxy character, and that was something that a lot of people try to do to fit higher gain guitar stuff into busier mixes. Of course, we have really big drum sounds and reverbs in this, in the actual song Danger Zone, and also some interesting keyboard work, so kind of isolating that space there so the guitar really fits in perfectly but sounds big and fat, even though maybe on its own might be a little bit boxy sounding. This was a great example of Dann Huff taking that lead tone, fitting it in perfectly where it needed to be in the mix. I'm going to take it back to Ben. He's going to demonstrate some of that for us. We're going to be using the same guitar, my Anderson Super Strat in the bridge position. We're going to be running the Riot and the Tube Screamer together to get some of that boxiness mid-range from the Tube Screamer, the high gain from the Riot, and really maybe just turn the chorus down quite a bit so it's a little bit more mellow and really bring in that great delay and reverb tone that I have from the Collider, running that full wet, dry, wet. Let's do it. Sounds absolutely like the album. Ben absolutely nailed it here. So now I want to go to another song in keeping with the high gain by Shania Twain. This was in the late 90s, right around 99. And Dann Huff played on this song called Man, I Feel Like a Woman. And it does a very similar thing where it takes a high gain sound, EQs it down to kind of a very narrow area, and just gets this really, really great, dirty rhythm tone. At this time, Dann Huff was already back in Nashville, and typically these sorts of sessions would go to guys like Brent Mason. So just speaking to the type of versatility that Dann Huff had, where he could be doing some of these sessions, and I do think that Brent Mason did play on several of Shania's songs on that particular album that has this song on it. But Dan was able to fill in that spot, was able to add exactly what it needed, bringing some of that high gain rhythm tone and being able to fill in some big shoes with a great player like Brent Mason. Let's check out this song. We're going to again use the Riot. We're going to use the Tube Screamer together, get that kind of boxiness, a little bit of that mid-range, and then add the gain and maybe more of that top end from the Riot. No chorus on this one, a little bit more dry on the delay and reverb side so we can get that really kind of rock and roll rhythm tone.
Let's go, girls.
Sounded just like the album there. I really think we're getting close with these effects. Again, these are common pedals that really anybody can get, nothing really exclusive or unusual. Again, anything that we use today is going to be linked in the description, so you're welcome to check any of this stuff out. But let's go into another song. This is a cool song by Peter Cetera that actually was popularized through the Karate Kid movie called Glory of Love. Now, this is a great song because it does two things. It has some really great bone-clean parts with lots of compression and delay, and then adds right on top of that double track some really high gain stuff. And this is really cool because this is something not only that producers might be requesting during that era, but Dann Huff really nailed in terms of melding those two tones and creating two parts that fit together perfectly. There's some swells with some high gain kind of lead tones that swell into the actual part that we're going to play here. Then it goes into the part that's doubled, not only dirty, but also clean. You have some really, really cool stuff going on here. I think this is a good example of sort of the blending of the things that Dann Huff does great. He can play really clean stuff. He can play really dirty stuff. Blends that kind of lead tone and that clean rhythm tone together, double tracked. I'm going to bring back Ben. We're going to check this out. So that was Glory of Love. You heard those two parts, clean and dirty, right on top of each other. Did those dirty swells coming in, and then double track the clean and the dirty, and then the clean kind of continues to taper out as we fade it out of that part. Really, really great song. Really, really memorable. I know a lot of us who were alive during the Karate Kids release. It was a huge song. It was a huge movie. And this was a really cool song that kind of scored that whole entire thing. So I'm glad that we could recreate that and also show some of Dann Huff's versatility as a guitar player as a component of that. I want to do one more song here that really shows, I think, the complete versatility of what Dann Huff does, where it's a really dry, clean, funky tone. Generally, when we think about clean funk tones in the context of studio musicians, we're thinking of guys like David Williams, we're thinking about guys like Paul Jackson Jr. And I think although those guys are incredible in their own right and have played on so many different hits, Dann Huff was really a guy that could do it all, one-stop shop, could give you the high gain stuff, could give you the virtuosic shredding stuff, could give you the funk, could give you the beautiful ambient cleans, was really a jack of all trades. This song is Madonna's Like a Prayer. Again, this is taking us back to the late 80s, but we're hearing some really great funk parts just laid right in the pocket. Pretty dry, just compression here. We're going to be using the Mirage, the RF Mirage, to do all this, and then just going straight into the Hot Rod DeVille, doing a little bit of reverb, no delay on this one. Again, fairly dry. Bring back in Ben. Let's check this out. Absolutely killer. Funky, stanky, right in the pocket. Ben did a great job of recreating those tones from Dann Huff. Absolutely love the way that that's sounding. And I hope that you guys dug this too. This was our retrospective here, us paying homage to one of the best session musicians of all time, Dann Huff, and certainly underrated. As I said in the beginning, many of us, when we hear Dann Huff, we might think we're hearing a Steve Lukather. We might think that we're hearing a Michael Landau or a Michael Thompson, or maybe even on some of those funk parts, a David Williams or a Paul Jackson Jr. That was how great Dann Huff was. He was able to meld a lot of styles together, sound really great, come up with great parts, great melodies, and really the thing that differentiates these great session musicians that I've mentioned throughout the video from everybody else is they're great arrangers and come up with great parts on the spot. Most of this stuff was never written out for these guys. If you haven't heard about Dann Huff, definitely go check him out. He is a wonderful producer, has done some great stuff for artists that you definitely have listened to, people like Taylor Swift, Keith Urban, and many, many more. He is an absolute powerhouse of a producer, but was also an absolute powerhouse of a guitar player that many of us don't know about, but you should definitely check out his work. Go over to Discogs or All Credits, and you're just going to see a massive rap sheet of stuff he's played on. Absolutely incredible. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. I hope you enjoyed Ben's playing, one of my favorite absolute guitar players of all time. If you want to learn more about Ben, check out his Instagram. We're going to link that in the description as well. If you're interested in these pedals or the signal path, definitely check that out in the description as well. If you want to support us further, you can always head over to our Patreon page and sign up for one of our different membership options, or hire me for a one-on-one consult over on therigdr.com, where we also sell all of our cables, instrument cables, patch cables. We also sell power cables, our signature Velcro, also all the accessories that you're going to need in order to build your pedal board, including our pedal board surfaces. You can also support us by purchasing one of our pedals over on vertexeffects.com, or head over to our dealers page where you can purchase a pedal from one of our authorized dealers. That goes a long way in helping support us so we can continue to put out this great content. And if you want some other free ways to support, an easy way to do is just give us a thumbs up. Write us a comment about one of your favorite parts or favorite songs or favorite Dann Huff song, maybe one that we played today or one that you knew that he played on. That also is a big help. Or check us out over on our podcast, on all the common podcatchers from Spotify to iTunes and all the ones that you use. We do long form versions of a lot of the same topics that we talk about all the time over on the channel here. So please do check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, aka The Rig Doctor. We'll see you next time.